Hey guys, what is going on? It's me, Box12 here, and welcome back to another video. I know I've never talked about a movie on this channel before, at least not officially like this, but I decided to make an exception because a very, very special film just came out not even a week ago, that of course being Spider-Man No Way Home. So yes, I'm going to be discussing spoilers in this video. Going to talk about the whole thing because everything great about this movie is a spoiler, and there's some insane plot details I just have to go over, and if you don't already know about it, then please go see the movie for yourself. If you're at all interested in this sort of thing, superhero movies, Spider-Man specifically, you're going to have a good time. It's a really good movie, and one of the MCU's best, definitely Tom Holland's best Spider-Man movie, by far, and maybe even the fourth or third best Spider-Man film? I don't know, it's tough to see where it places right now. So yes, if you haven't seen it, highly recommend it, not just because I think it's good or to avoid spoilers, but having the theater experience was really impactful. Not that you won't enjoy the movie without it, but with it, it made those really hype moments even more exciting. Everybody in the crowd, it was hot. It was sweaty in there from all the warm bodies just screaming when those amazing moments happened. Also, I had to pee really bad. I went right before the movie started, and then the previews ended, and I'm like, oh no. I had half a cup of water. I don't know where it came from. I had to miss the mid-credit scene because I had to beat everyone else to the restroom and make sure I was first. I was in there for 2.5 minutes. So once again, yes, talking about spoilers, if you're okay with that, let's begin. For the sake of fairness, I'll address a couple of things that maybe I didn't think worked that well for the movie or that you might take issue with. The humor, as with many Marvel movies, can be hit or miss. Some jokes land, some don't. But I think this is much better than your average MCU film, especially later on in the film. It really picks up. But the first 15 minutes, yeah, there was some humor that I'm just like, I don't really need a sex joke in my Spider-Man movie. Some of the villains also get shortchanged, and a lot of people have been bringing that up because it's true. Lizard and Sandman they just don't really do much. They're really there to fill the character roster. This is primarily focusing on Green Goblin, mainly, and then Doc Ock and Electro. Also, I don't know why, but Sandman was like CG for practically the whole movie, like in sand form. It makes me wonder if they couldn't get the actor to come on set, and it was actually cheaper to pay the VFX artist to do a CG version of him and not pay the actor to be on set. There are also a few plot conveniences or things that you can tell were written to move the plot forward, but they're kind of obvious and might have some really easy alternate solutions, like whenever Peter messes up the spell to have everybody forget that he's Spider-Man. Because the whole reason that it messes up is because Doctor Strange says, everybody's going to forget you're Peter Parker, and he's like, wait, no. I don't want everyone to forget. What about Aunt May, MJ, Ned? And so then he messes it up. They could have easily had a conversation beforehand where Doctor Strange says, so this spell's going to erase everyone's memory. Is that okay? No, I want these people to remember. Oh, okay. Glad we talked about that ahead of time. Nope, they just jump right into it. It's like, all right, crisis could have been easily averted, but I get it. You need a story, and I guess they didn't have a better way of writing that in. Contrasting that, we actually have good motivation later on where Peter does mess something up by webbing the cube that could send all the villains back, but he chooses to take it and fight Strange because he wants to save the villains instead of returning them to their worlds where they just die. That actually makes sense, why he would mess it up, because that has serious consequences later on. He creates a huge problem for himself. But he did it because he thought he was doing the right thing by taking it away from Strange and trying to help the villains. That's smart, it's in line with the character, no plot holes there, it makes sense. Not discussing this magical spell beforehand, a little weak, but only happens a couple of times throughout the movie. It's not a big deal, and there's so much high entertainment value throughout the rest of it that you're not going to notice, you're not going to care, you're going to be having too good of a time. So let's talk about that. First of all, everybody gives 100% here. Willem Dafoe steals the show as Goblin. He was great back in 2002, and it's like not a day has passed. I won't say it tops his performance from before, it just carries over. It's the part 2 we didn't know we would ever get. There's a scene where he's getting punched by Peter repeatedly in the face. Heavy punches too, very real. And he's just smiling and laughing while it happens. And it's scary. It's awesome. I also like the heroic approach that they took to stopping the villains. It's not just finding them, fighting them, winning, and then zapping them back to their dimension. Spider-Man has the idea from Aunt May to save them, because he knows that they're just going to get returned to their world and die. That's a very wholesome approach to beating the bad guys. I really like that, even though the reasoning's a little shaky, because Aunt May convinces Peter to do this, and Strange's reasoning for not is because they're from a different dimension. This is not our problem. We're talking about the multiverse. Like, we have to get them out of here as soon as possible. Who knows what's going to happen? It's not our fight, it's their fate. If you cure them here and send them back, you're messing with their fate. Who knows what consequences there are going to be? And I got to side with Strange on that. I mean, of course, if you can save someone, that's always the right thing to do. But in this context, you could end up doing a whole lot more harm because of the lack of information. Don't know why Peter decided to bring all the villains into the apartment at the same time for fixing. You'd think he would have done that one at a time. Goblin double crosses them because his alter ego is still very much in control, resulting in one of the most brutal fights. Goblin is smashing Tom through just floor after floor in the building. And then the big moment happens that really shocked me, that I wasn't expecting. Tom Holland is down, getting beaten by the Goblin. So Aunt May stands up to try and protect her, essentially her son. And Goblin just knocks her away with the glider. And then Goblin goes away, Peter picks up Aunt May. And I thought it was going to be okay for a minute. Like, they were both standing, and then she collapses. Peter sees the blood. She's getting more and more tired, and I'm like, oh man, they're doing it. Aunt May dies. And she works for Feast in this, which I don't remember if she did in the previous movies. But that is also where she worked in the PS4 game. And so I was like, was this foreshadowing? Clever foreshadowing for the people who only played the game? It was genius, if so. This scene, I think, was Tom Holland's best. You really felt bad. You felt so bad for him, and it was so real. He gave it his all. The whole theater was quiet when that happened. Just utter silence. Heartbreaking scene of him telling Aunt May it's going to be okay when he knows it's not gonna. And of course, that leads into Peter wanting revenge on the Goblin. He says he wants to kill him. He doesn't care anymore, and you believe him. You 100% believe him. Before that, of course, we got the scene. Because Ned and MJ are trying to find Peter, they open up a portal saying, I need to find Peter Parker, show me Peter Parker, or something like that. And when that happened, you can see a Spider-Man way off in there, but of course we know that Tom's been damaged, and he's not wearing his mask. So when we see a Spider-Man silhouette with the mask on, everybody was like starting to freak out, because in comes Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in his Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit, and the crowd just lost it. Absolutely lost their minds. And then he took off the mask, they lost it again. It was so good. And while, yeah, I kind of suspected they would be in here just as we all did, we weren't sure if it was actually going to happen. Assuming you didn't look up the cast ahead of time, or any spoilers, which I didn't. So this was bliss. And of course, right after, we get a very funny interaction where, yeah, I got the tingles, but just not for bread. And then, in an attempt to find Tom again, they open up another portal for another Peter Parker, and in comes Tobey Maguire. Thunderous applause and cheering. It was so exciting to see that, although he wasn't wearing his suit. So at first, when he stepped through, I was like, oh, is that not him? Is this just going to be some other guy? But then you see his face, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's Tobey! And so for the remaining almost half of the movie, we have all three Spider-Men, all in the same room, the same universe, talking to each other, making jokes, having heart-to-heart, and it's pure bliss. This is the kind of fan service you want. It never feels pandering. It never feels like a cash grab. They don't show up for 5 seconds and disappear, which I wasn't suspecting they would do that. My worst fear was that they just wouldn't be in the movie and that we all hyped it up. But I didn't think that if they were going to put them in the movie, it was going to be quick because everybody would hate that. And they know everybody would hate that. So I was never concerned that they would do that. They joke about the web shooters and how he's got organic webbing and they have to actually use web shooters, and that's fun. Toby gives Andrew a pep talk about, no, you are amazing. Can we talk about this for a second? You are amazing. And you can tell the whole time Andrew feels like he's playing second fiddle, because I think in real life he might feel that way. That his Spider-Man always played second to Tobey's because he's the original, and Andrew only got 2 films, and they weren't as well received as the Raimi trilogy, nor have they been as well received as the Holland movies. Andrew's Spider-Man has always been a bit of a middle child in that way. And you can tell that they probably put this pep talk in here to give him some on-screen validation. On top of one of the best scenes in the whole movie, when MJ is falling off the platform, Tom goes for her, Goblin's glider snatches him away, and as soon as it cuts to Andrew, the whole theater lost their minds. He catches her, he saves her, and it was one of the most cathartic moments. Redemption for the character, and not just for the character as a whole, like his arc. He couldn't save Gwen, and that haunts him. By saving MJ, he can feel better about that at least. It still gives me chills just thinking about it. And just seeing all 3 Spider-Men fighting these villains back to back was incredible. I will say, there wasn't really an action scene that I felt was on par with the best Spider-Man scenes. There's not like really anything in here where I'm like, oh, that scene when this happened and this. It's more like reveals. When the characters get revealed and when they have this interaction or this shot was really cool. There's no train fight from Spider-Man 2. There's no gritty, broken building fight with Goblin and Spider-Man like at the end of 1. There's no subway fight with Sandman and Black Suit Spidey, where you just really feel like you're in the action, and it's got those really memorable moments like pushing Sandman's face into the train and you see his teeth fly out. Like, just details like that are kind of missing from a lot of the action here. It's still really good and entertaining, but it definitely feels like a Marvel movie. You may or may not have seen it before. You haven't seen these characters together, but you've seen the kind of action before, and so whether or not that's just superhero fatigue or the movie itself not striking a huge impact visually, then whatever it might be. The final fight on the shield in the water, though, from the Statue of Liberty, that was really good. That's the closest we have to a really defining fight, because Goblin and Tom Holland are fighting on there. And of course, he killed Aunt May. He wants her dead. You can feel every punch. The music is climbing. It's really brutal. Tom punches the ground at one point, and it's just like thunderous. It ruptures the whole thing. And then he beats the Goblin down in these really brutal punches that are super reminiscent of Spider-Man 1. And then he picks up the glider. And he's going to stab the Goblin for what he did. And you're kind of expecting that. And it's not going to go through, because you're like, something's going to stop him. But they couldn't have done it better. Tobey Maguire steps in, stops the glider, and holds it there for a minute while Tom cools off, looks him in the eye, no words, convinces him to put it down. And this is a great moment, not just because Tom resisted the urge and maintained his Spider-Man-ness, but Peter, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, was able to save Norman from his own glider, which he couldn't do in his own movie. The same glider that killed Harry. So in a way, this was some redemption for his character, too. He gets a great moment with Ock. How have you been? I'm trying to do better. I didn't even mention the heart-to-heart talk that happens whenever Tom's really upset from Aunt May's death, and then the other 2 Spider-Men come in, and they talk about their experiences, and each one of them, the tears are welling up. You can see it in their eyes. Andrew especially is really good at almost crying. He has such a good actor, man. Such a great performance. I want to see Amazing Spider-Man 3 and Spider-Man 4, and all 3 of them again on screen in the MCU, and maybe all of them in Spider-Verse as well in animated form. I just want to see that. I just want more of these actors as Spider-Man. People always try to pick favorites, so who's the best? I don't care. It's Spider-Man. I love all portrayals of Spider-Man that I think get the character right and that are good. The movie also has a really good ending where Tom asks Strange to do another spell, but this time have the entire world forget about Peter Parker, period. Steven even has a little tear-jerking moment where he's like, but then I'll forget who you are too. He doesn't want that because he likes Peter. He's his friend. And you can tell he really doesn't want to do it. Although, I have some confusion with that because I thought that the original spell was going to wipe everyone's memory of who Peter was anyway, or of his reveal, unless they were just planning to erase everyone's memory who recently found out. Or maybe Strange was exempt from that spell because he was casting it. Again, questions that don't have answers, so I don't really know. I'm just wondering how that's any different from the final spell, which is make the entire world forget who Peter Parker is. I guess if the world forgets Spider-Man is Peter Parker, then Steven would still have a relationship with Peter and Spider-Man separately, but he just wouldn't know that they're the same. I don't really know how that would work, though. In any case, it's a very emotional ending because they go through with it, and Peter and MJ love each other. So to see Peter go into the coffee shop and talk to her, and MJ not know who he is, and he's planning on doing this whole speech to try and get her to remember that they planned beforehand, and he decides to not go through with it because with great power comes great responsibility, and he thinks that his friends and loved ones not knowing who he is might be better. An unbelievably selfless action. And that's what Spider-Man's all about, making the hard choices. And so overall, I just loved Spider-Man No Way Home. Again, yeah, it has some issues, a few plot points that unravel the more you think about it, questions that don't get answered. But the stuff that works, the good stuff here, far outweighs it and is so entertaining. One of the most insane crossovers of all time that I really can't complain. And I don't think anybody else really is going to either. I really hope they do more with this. I think this opens up a huge gateway to more possibilities. I didn't think they could top Endgame. I thought that was it. I thought MCU was going to take a break or be done. Nope, they're coming in strong with Spider-Man Overload. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, don't forget to check out the next episode whenever I post it, which will probably be soon. All right.
See you, chump.